I'm gonna make a lasagna sauce using lentils instead of hamburger because they're softer and cheaper. Then later we'll build the lasagna with a lot of different types of cheeses. I had surgery on my jaw 2.5 years ago, and after that I had to eat soft foods. They're still good, they're just not crunchy. Before we start going through everything, let's start the lentils on the stove. I'm gonna use 1 cup of lentils, and I mean 1 cup of dry lentils. I'm gonna rinse them in the sink and then put them in the pan. We'll need 3 cups of liquid, 3 to 4 cups. If you want to add in that beef flavor, I would use beef stock. I just don't happen to have any right now. I have some beef bouillon cubes from when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Let's hope this isn't a mistake. I'm using 1 bouillon cube per cup of water, but I would use whatever is on the package. Start the lentils on high till they begin to boil. Now let's take a minute to go through the rest of the ingredients. We're gonna need tomato paste, red wine, bay leaves, and oregano for the sauce. For the fresh vegetables, we're gonna need an onion, a carrot, and garlic, and celery. I just also don't have any of that. For our cheeses, we're gonna need ricotta, mozzarella, Parmesan, and my family uses cheddar cheese too. I honestly have never seen anybody else do it, but that's how we make ours. For the pasta, I'm using chickpea orzo because it's got protein, and the pieces are really small, so they're very easy to eat. This is my bouquet for the week. Turn down the lentils and cover with a lid. Cut the onion into really tiny pieces, 1/4 inch or less. I cut up an entire onion, a yellow onion. Use whatever kind you like. And then I put a tablespoon of oil in the pan and let it start heating up. I'm gonna add a big pinch of salt on top of the onion to help the water cook out of it. And then while that's cooking, I'm going to do a big pinch of salt is like 1/4 teaspoon or less. And while those are cooking, I'm going to do a thing. I'm going to grate a carrot. I'm going to take a box grater on the smaller side and grate a carrot. If I had celery, I would chop up the celery really tiny or put it in the food processor. I put in 3 cups of water, and the lentils were cooked before the water boiled off. They've been cooking for a half hour, and they're more than done. They're actually a little soft. I made this many lentils because I'm trying to make the equivalent to 1 pound to 1.5 pounds of hamburger. Okay, box grater, the smaller side. And I'm just gonna grate the carrot. It's one way to add more vegetables into the sauce. When I make tomato sauce, when I can it, I also put in carrot and celery and garlic into that sauce as well. We're gonna let the carrot cook in the tomato sauce when the tomato sauce is made. And for this recipe, the sauce is mostly the way my grandmother made it, minus the addition of vegetables. And since the recipe always said Grandma's lasagna recipe, I was like, oh, okay, that's great. And I was asking my mom about it one day, and I asked her a bunch of questions about it, and she was like, it's called Grandma's recipe, but it's actually the recipe from the back of a box of pasta. She's like, this isn't a family secret that's been passed down for generation to generation. We'll need to chop 2 cloves of garlic. For garlic, I use a trick I learned on the internet. And you take all the heads of garlic, take out the cloves, put them in the food processor, and blend them up. And then portion it out into servings so that it's about 1 clove of garlic per serving. And then you don't have to take time messing with the garlic the whole time every time you cook. Now that the onion's softened, I'm gonna add in the carrot. Since the carrot pieces are really small, they'll cook fast. So you wanna make sure the onion is pretty much cooked before you add in the carrot. I'm also going to add in my garlic, and since my garlic has been frozen, it's going to cool down the whole mixture. It'll take a minute for everything to come back up to temperature. 2 cloves of garlic. This was the bag where all the cloves were huge, so it might be closer to 3 cloves of regular garlic. I'm going to put another big pinch of salt with the rest of the vegetables. As soon as you can smell the garlic through the room, that's when it's fragrant, and you can start adding the tomato paste. 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste. I have almost a full can. I have half a can of diced tomatoes that I'm going to blitz in the blender to turn it into tomato sauce, and that's how I'm going to make up the rest of my tomato paste. You want to let it toast in the pan. You're going to add in 3/4 of a cup of water. The water and the tomato paste together are basically making tomato sauce. So if you have a can of tomato sauce, that would work. Or this is just going to be, with the tomato paste, the tomato flavor will be stronger and it'll be a little bit thicker. And then we need 1 cup of red wine. Use whatever wine you would drink. And if you don't cook with wine, or if you're like me and you have a bottle you can't open, then you can use beef stock instead. I just get the little mini bottles from the grocery store because they're about 3/4 of a cup. It's about 1 serving for whenever I cook with it. That's almost a cup. And I have once again chosen the wrong sized pan. We need 3 bay leaves and a teaspoon of oregano. And then mix everything together and let it simmer. When I cook it with hamburger, I let it simmer for an hour. And I am going to add in the lentils with this. And this is a little bit of extra tomato sauce from that can of diced tomatoes, from the half a can of diced tomatoes that I had in the fridge. I'm just using what I had left over. I didn't want it to go bad. You can definitely do it just the way that it's written, which is a 6-ounce can of tomato paste and a cup of water, or 3/4 of a cup of water. I cooked the lentils separately because I didn't know if they would get cooked all the way, cooking in the sauce, and I wanted to make sure that they weren't crunchy. I'm going to do 2 cups of lentils. There's like 1/4 of a cup left in the pan that I can use in a different dish. And while it's simmering, I'm going to make the cheese mixture. Now I can use the lentils pan to make the pasta. I'm going to make the entire box. It's chickpea pasta. It says cook for 9 to 11 minutes, but I think it cooks faster than that, especially because the pieces are so tiny. I'm going to need a cup of ricotta. This is a 1/2 cup measuring scoop, so I'm going to use 2 of them. I'm also going to use some fresh herbs from the garden. I'm going to use basil and oregano, a tablespoon of each. If you have dried herbs, you would use a teaspoon of each. Or you don't have to add herbs at all. You can just let the cheese flavor stand on its own. And I'm going to do a 1/4 cup of Parmesan. Add the herbs and mix them together. I have a whole bouquet of basil and oregano. I might end up using more basil than oregano because I have so much of it. For the oregano, you put your finger near the top of the stem and then run it down, and the leaves should come right off. I'm going to run the knife through to release the oils. That was a tablespoon of oregano, so that means I'm going to have a metric ton of basil. Run your finger down the leaves, or down the stem, again, to get the leaves to come off. And then pick them off the top. I'm cutting them really tiny because everything else in the sauce is really tiny, so I don't want to be taking a bite and then get like a huge lettuce leaf-sized piece of basil. I'm going to do more basil just because I picked a bunch, so I'm going to use it. But I would recommend only using a tablespoon of it. I'll let you know if this was a terrible, terrible error. I don't think it will be. Fresh herbs always taste good. It's been 9 minutes. I'm going to drain the pasta. And then when we layer it in the pan, it's going to be sauce, pasta, cheese. Sauce, pasta, cheese. I'm not going to end with cheese on top though, because I feel like a cheese crust is too difficult to bite through. So I'm going to end with sauce. This is a teeny bit smaller than a 9x13, but it's close enough. Okay, sauce. There's the other bay leaf. Man, I've been looking for that. That's the dishwasher. Sorry if it's too loud. Pasta. And I don't just put ricotta on, I put mozzarella and cheddar. But whatever cheeses your family likes to eat, go ahead and use those. Do little dollops of cheese. That makes it easier to spread. So this isn't going to come out of the pan in a nice, beautiful square. It's more like a deconstructed lasagna. It's a way to have lasagna on a soft food diet, so I'm all for it. Okay, spread it as good as you can. Nothing needs to be perfect. Life isn't perfect. Mozzarella. More than a handful and a half. And a little bit of cheddar. And then the sauce. And because we're trying to spread the sauce over something now that isn't firm, that moves, it's going to be like the pasta or the ricotta. You want to do dollops. Forgot to turn off the burner. Whoops. And I think I'm gonna have some sauce left over. If you have any left over, I would freeze it, and then you can use it to make like a little mini lasagna at another time. Pasta. Lasagna noodles might be soft enough, or would be soft enough to bite through. This idea just seemed like it would be easier to eat. There isn't anything in here that I would have to chew, because all the pieces are small enough that you can just, if you wanted to, you could just swallow them. Cheese. Mozzarella. Since I'm not ending with cheese, I put the rest of the cheese in the second layer, and I'm ending with sauce. Bake at 350 for 30 minutes to get the cheese all melty.